Alright, my name is Josh James and I'm going to be doing some videos for both leatherworking and woodworking on my channel. I hope you enjoy them. If you do, leave a comment and subscribe. I will try and get one out once a week. I'm going to rotate between woodworking and leatherworking. I do a lot of leatherworking during the week in the evenings because it's quieter and I have more time. I do have kids in the house and a family to help with, so it's not something I can do or dedicate too much time to, but I wanted to start filming it so that I can just have a record of it. Maybe my 6-year-old son will want to do it one day and he'll see all of the videos to help him along, and it may help some of you guys as well. So let's try and do this, and if you enjoy it, subscribe. If not, subscribe and give it a shot. Maybe, who knows. Anyway, so what I'm doing here is I am laying out a template. It's basically just 11 by 17 sheets of paper. I typically do a template on Fusion 360, a program that I have and use for modeling of woodworking and leather to make templates. You always want to do a template when doing leather because it is not forgiving at all compared to maybe cloth or something along those lines. And leather, as you probably know, is not cheap. This leather here is Kodiak leather. It's about 4 ounces, I believe. It's pull-up leather, which means if you reach in from the underside and you push out to the finished side, you will see like a line or a change in the color. Typically, you see this used for garments, purses, stuff like that. But in this case, I'm using it for an apron that I'm making for a friend who is on a barbecue team. Leather aprons have become quite popular in the barbecue arena and also for leatherworkers and woodworkers. I myself am going to make one for me as well because I tend to get Type Bond 3 glue all over my clothes when I'm woodworking, and that does not come off. So these do come in handy. Plus, it's a good way to have your tools easily accessible on your body instead of looking around your shop. In my case, my shop is super small. It's 10 by 12. I have everything in this little bitty space that I need, just not a lot of space to do it in, so I make the best of it, and I'll show you that one day on maybe on a shop tour. But you can make a lot of things in a small area. You do not have to have a 30 by 30 shop with the best tools in the world. You can do a lot of this stuff without all those things. Like right here, I'm using a cutting knife, circular knife from, I think, Hobby Lobby. Typically, leatherworkers use the half knife, which is actually my logo for Josh James Design. I find it useful sometimes, but the circular knife is just faster and it's easier to swap out blades, which I need to do now. I'm noticing this blade is super dull, but being cheap here and not replacing it, so I'll have to go back here in a minute with a razor blade and trim it up a little bit to get it off. I'm cutting off the bottom piece of the leather, and this will be the bottom of the apron. I wanted to get it as straight as possible, and you'll notice that I'm using the clear tabletop measure cover above my workbench, and that is to save obviously knife cuts in my workbench, and you can use it to line up your measuring devices, in this case a yardstick, at both ends to get a perfect cut. They really do come in handy. So I'm going to continue here to tape down the makeshift template now that I've cut off the bottom part, and it's starting to somewhat take form of an apron, if you can kind of tell what's going on here. If not, you will see in just a minute. Always a good idea to use your tape measures, your rulers, whatever you want to use to line up your cuts in leather. Because if you think that you are good enough to cut a long paper without a metal guide, you're probably going to find out real quick that you are not. And again, leather is not cheap, so use a guide when you're cutting leather. That's all I can say. I've tried to Wild West it sometimes without one and have ruined projects nearing the end of the project. And I do use blue tape. I know it's just painter's tape. It's not the best tape to use with leather. If you use it on the finish side, it could leave marks. Typically it does. There is tape out there that's better. I just was in a hurry on this particular project because the client needed this pretty quick for a cook-off. So I used what I had enough of to finish the project. Again, do not use blue tape on the top of leather. It will ruin it quickly. What I'm doing here is measuring out where I want the apron to wrap around my upper waist here. And looking back, I think I'm going to do it different next time. I wanted it to be a little bit longer. Mine, or this particular one, when I tried it on, was probably 4 or 5 inches above my knee, which is okay, but I think I want to make it a little longer next time. Typically you see like a blacksmith's apron goes down almost to the knees and has the split in the middle, which is also a nice way of doing these. But it worked, and I think the client will be happy as well. I mean, I don't think you're going to be getting barbecue on your knees unless it's late in the cook-off and you've had one too many. Then it may be a problem. So we'll see. This is something I've not made before, and if it's popular, I may add them to my website, which is joshjamesphotography.com, which I also do photography on the side. So this knife here has been great, and I'll link one in the show notes. It's a pretty popular knife with leatherworkers. I pronounce it indispensable. I'm not sure if that's how you say it, but I've had it a while. It's great. It's easily sharpened. It's just precise. It's a great knife that will last a long time. What else we have here? So here I've folded over the apron, and I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to get the angle that I want, because again, I have not made one of these before. So what I decided to do was grab my handy carpenter square and use it to guide me for a good angle at the apron below the chest. And it seemed to have done a great job. However, I'm not really sure if I would do it again. I don't really like where the angle fell as far as where you attach the belts at the bottom when I tried this on. So I'll probably use a different technique. Client will still be happy with this, I think, but you can see I'm just turning the carpenter's angle and cutting it. And I apologize for the wobbling of the camera. I will be doing overhead shots towards the end of this project with a different setup that I have for photography that should eliminate that in its entirety. That was just an idea I had. So you'll see overhead shots on most of my videos moving forward instead of at the angle you're seeing now. But anyway, this is one way of cutting your angles, and it does do the job. Okay, what I have here is what's called a saddle maker's groover, and what this does is it gives you a guide pretty much for stitching along edges. You can adjust it with that angled piece there that looks almost like a Allen wrench. You can extend that out and give yourself more of a width off the edge if you would like. Basically, it's a seam, like doing a seam allowance almost. In this case, my idea was to give myself this line, which is kind of like a trench, if you will, in leather. It gives you some depth for the thread to sink into, which makes it level with the leather. It's just a good look. You can also use it with veg tan leather, which will help you when you go to use your tools to make your designs along edges and everything else with leatherworking. You see it a lot with belts and anything with saddles, hence the name of the tool. But my initial idea here was to simply make this line and then come back and stitch inside it and give that look of a sewn edge, but it was really going to be more of a faux edge. But I just, as it went on, I didn't like that, and you'll see shortly when I get to the sewing machine what I ended up doing. I just think that leather looks better in something like this with a different type of edge, like a more of a using cording or something along those lines to give you that more clean, higher end look, if you will. But you'll see what I'm talking about here again when I get to the sewing machine. So finally we move it over to the sewing machine. This is a Stitch Master that Tandy Leather sold for a while there. I found this for a steal online, and it's been a great sewing machine. It's nice because, as you're seeing here in real time, how slow it's able to go. It's amazing when you have this kind of control when you're sewing leather, because unlike thread, this is not forgiving. If you cut leather, if you sew leather with a regular sewing machine, A, it's probably not going to work anyway because the pressure foot is not very strong enough to push the needle itself through the leather because of its thickness, and also you can't go this slow. Like I said, this is real time. I am going super slow. I do get a little selfish at one point, give it a little bit more gas, and I get the seam off, which is not something you want to do. So don't get greedy and use a sewing machine that's made for leather, an industrial sewing machine. The main complaint I have about this particular sewing machine is that the pressing foot only goes so high, and it doesn't go high enough to get up into a bigger thickness leather. So that's a problem. And also, now that I think about it, the mark that it's leaving behind is from the presser foot not having a smooth surface on the bottom. So I try to avoid this on the finished side, but if it does happen, you can get a little bit of it out. It's not easy, but yeah, it can be done. I will probably take the pressure foots off and dip it in Plasti Dip, which you can buy from Home Depot or Lowe's, and that will put a rubber surround on it to where it's smooth to avoid these track lines on the leather, which are super frustrating. But anyway, all in all, it's a great leatherworking sewing machine, and I will link it in the show notes. It's made by a company called Sailrite, who makes sewing machines for sailboats, essentially, hence the name, drapery and heavy industrial type materials and textiles. But they did partner up with Tandy Leather years back and made this machine for leatherworking. It has a servo motor beneath the table that allows you to slow it down to these speeds. If I were to turn the motor off, disconnect it, or turn it all the way up, it will basically haul ass like most sewing machines. So it's perfect for that. The speed and the amount of pressure that it has to push needles through leather is quite amazing. I highly recommend it for people in leatherworking. Would I buy another one? I'm not sure. It does do the job and it does it well, but it doesn't help with all applications. So I don't know. I don't know where I stand on that. The jury is still out. Anyway, I'm going to finish this off, let you watch the rest of it, and part 2 is on the way. I wanted to put this all in one video, but it ended up being a large video. So hope you enjoy. Please subscribe. I want to have more leatherworking and woodworking to come. Maybe some photography tips as well. I'm not a professional photographer. I've been doing that the longest of the 3 hobbies, if you will. But I have learned a lot and could probably show a few things, hopefully you learn from me on. Anyway, thanks again for watching, and please subscribe.